Hey everybody, I'm here back at home filming the first time here for a long time. It's rare that I get an opportunity of peace and quiet to be able to film. Unfortunately, that is because our air conditioning is still broken, so everybody is out in air-conditioned places. And I'm just here temporarily before I have to go to work, and can't even have the fan on because it's already too loud with my computer fan. And I'm just melting here. Anyway, I'm going to be doing Bookchat Miss Day's June book chat, which is on underrated and underknown books. Basically books that you feel are underappreciated. This was a really difficult one for me because I feel like although I have read a lot of, underknown books, most of them, honestly, I feel like are not known for a reason because I didn't like the majority of them. And I also feel that most of my favorite books are pretty well, they're decently known and appreciated. So I had a hard time trying to find out of the books that I love, like which ones I felt were not appreciated enough. There were a lot that were questionable, and I'm like, I don't think this counts. Too many people know about this. Too many people like this or whatever. But eventually I came up with 5. The first one I do not have because it is out of print. I'm trying to get a hold of a used copy of it, but it is Winter of Fire by Cheryl Jordan, and this is a book I read in 8th grade, and it was from the school library, and it was not until years later that I even was able to remember the name to be able to try to locate it, and found out that it was out of print. But this is a book set in a fantasy, sci-fi-ish, kind of almost dystopian world where the world is divided between 2 classes. There are the chosen people, who are the higher class, and there's the quelled, who are the slaves. And it is, if I remember correctly, it's always like cold and winter time there, so there is this fire lord apparently who's able to make fire, keep people warm. The main character, who, what was her name? Elsa? I gotta look. Oh, Elsha, the main character, is a quelled, and their job is basically to always just mine for coal to keep the chosen people warm. She commits some bad crime, and she's sentenced to death, but then she's saved because she has these visions that she can see things, and the Fire Lord chooses her to be his handmaiden, so this is a good position for her for one of the quelled. And then she goes off on this adventure type thingy, and lots of cool stuff happens. This has been over 10 years since I read this book, but I remember absolutely loving it, and it was unfortunate that I forgot the title for the longest time, so I, was not able to read it. Now I'm trying to find a used copy online somewhere because I want to read it again. It's so bad. It was so good. I hope I still like it if I do end up reading it again. But anyway, the next book that I chose is I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. And I don't feel like this book is exactly all that underknown, but in comparison to Zusak's The Book Thief, which is extremely popular, this one kind of falls by the wayside. I think it has its fans, but I feel like it's not appreciated enough. This is about, it's kind of more of a contemporary, although it does have a slightly kind of supernatural-ish element to it. It is about a Australian teenager, I think he's 19 or something, named Ed Kennedy, who just is kind of just I don't want to say exactly a loser, but he doesn't have anything special about him. He's really not doing anything in his life. And all of a sudden he gets these missions to go on to help people in his community, and essentially he has to be a messenger to help people, and it's really neat. It has a weird twist at the end, nothing bad, but it's definitely bizarre, and I thought it was just a feel-good book, and it definitely has a good message for people that, it's never too late. You can always do something better with your life if you feel like, you're just not going anywhere, whatever. So, yeah, I think more people should read this and not just The Book Thief, although I did highly love that one as well. The next book I have is Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. Pretty much all of the Bronte sisters' books, with the exception of Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, are very much underknown. Unfortunately, well, that makes all of Charlotte Bronte's works, except for Jane Eyre, not very well known. But really the only one of Charlotte's books that I like is Jane Eyre. I've read all of them. I don't like The Professor, I don't like Shirley, I don't like Villette. I do like both of Anne Bronte's books, but I feel like The Tenant of Wildfell Hall is decently popular enough, so I ended up including Agnes Grey, even though it's not my favorite. This is based on Charlotte's own experience as a governess. It's about a girl in titular, Agnes Grey, whose family falls in a hard time, so she decides to go out and work as a governess to try to help them out and not be a burden anymore. And it's a very realistic portrayal of a governess's life, not like Jane Eyre at all. None of the gothic elements. It's just the problems in here are, you know, her dealing with spoiled and bratty children, and has romance in it, but it's like everyday things that would be going on in, you know, Victorian England. Although this might have been set a little bit before Victorian. I don't remember exactly what year, but it's the 1800s, whatever. So, you know, if you want to get into the Bronte sisters, but you're really not into that gothic elements, and you're really more of a Jane Austen fan, this is definitely the closest of the Bronte books. It's the closest to Jane Austen's style. So this is good, just kind of a bridge in between the two if you don't want to just jump into more, you know, crazy Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights books. Even though I do love those as well. They're definitely they're all over the place, and there's new like adaptations like every few years made of those. There has never been, as far as I know, a filmed version of Agnes Grey at all, so it would be kind of cool to see that. The next book I have is Crown Jewel by Sherwood Smith. This is another one from 8th grade that I had in the library. I originally read it. It was a set of 2 volumes, Crown Jewel and Court Jewel. It was a duology, I suppose. For this one, too, for the longest time, I did not remember what the book was, and I desperately wanted to read it again. Unlike Winter of Fire, I got lucky with this one, and 2 years ago, I found out, yes, it was still in print, and even better, it was printed in 1 volume, so I only had to buy 1 book. I get 2 for the price of 1 in here. And this is about, it's a high fantasy book about, centers on a girl named Meliara, who's kind of a rebellious, tomboyish girl, she's the daughter of an impoverished count, and then when her father dies, she and her brother both inherit, like become count and countess, and there's a war going on in her country, and then she goes out and fights and all this cool stuff. And I just think this world that Sherwood Smith created is just fascinating and really well thought out. I love the characters. I love Meliara, and the romance in it was really great. No real love triangle, no insta-love whatsoever, very much the opposite, and I love the, you know, romantic hero, even though that's really, he has a much bigger role in it than to just be, you know, the love interest or anything like that. And I desperately, in this volume too, there's actually a short story that was included as a bonus that's like slightly more in the future after this, which I adored reading about. I would love to read more, like an entire series. I know she's written some more short stories about future generations, but I have not been able to read those. But I love this book, and I feel like everybody should read it. It's one of the best YA fantasies that I've ever read. My last and 5th one, oh my god, I'm starting to sweat, so it's really good that I am wrapping this up. This is Ruth by Elizabeth Gaskell. I feel like Elizabeth Gaskell is a decently known Victorian British writer, but really her popular books are the ones that had the popular BBC miniseries, like North and South is definitely probably going to be her #1. Wives and Daughters has a decent following as well, and Cranford, because they did that a couple years ago. And she has a couple other books that were I liked to varying degrees. But this one, I definitely feel like is her most underappreciated book, Ruth. It is about a unwed mother in the Victorian era. Big scandal. And she's really like a virtuous woman. She was just a naive girl and who was taken advantage of, had no idea what was going on, and then ended up pregnant, and she's taken in by this I believe a brother and sister, who they make up this story that she's a widow, and then she becomes, I think, a governess, and she's well loved in the community. Everybody loves her, but that's only because no one knows that her son is illegitimate. And it's a very tragic book. I mean, I don't know what else you can expect about, you know, a Victorian book about an unwed mother. They don't tend to end very well if you've ever read any stories about them in the Victorian age. But it is not one of, usually a lot of Gaskell's more lighter topic books, like her romances and stuff like that, tend to have a lot of deaths in them. People just die left and right, and those are the more comedic books. This is a more tragic book, and there's not a lot of death at all. There is one character who dies. I'm not going to spoil who, but it's a sad and enlightening book, and it also shows, you know, at the time that controversial idea that just because someone has a child outside of marriage does not mean that they're this terrible person, which apparently everybody thought at the time. And so yeah, so I would definitely recommend this. I have to wrap this up, but I'll see you guys in my next video.